G'day, how you going? Thanks for tuning in this week to Riverview Live. Hope you're doing really well. We've had a great week here at church. We actually had Phil Baker come in and visit us for the first time in a long time. So he's still recovering from the procedure he had earlier this year. And this morning we've got a Riverview Phil Baker classic coming to you on wisdom. It's coming from the story of Joseph and the steps of a wise man, talking about destiny. It's a great message. So stay tuned in and I'll see you at the end.
Hey, good morning. Good to have you here. Good to have you here if you're watching on television around the world. We're talking about the hand of God over this theme. And of course, the phrase, the hand of God, is really theologically is a great word. In fact, this is a good word to learn, to throw into day-to-day conversation. It's the word anthropomorphism. Let's all say that, shall we? Anthropomorphism. And yeah, you can use it the next time you're ordering a coffee. So you have a flat white, please, 2 sugars, and make it in an anthropomorphic way, please. And that will, I'm sure, bring confusion to the barista. But it simply means anthropos is the Greek word for man. And basically the idea is to try to describe God by using something from humanity. The eyes of the Lord, the hand of God. It's not saying literally that God is in the shape of a human being, but we understand the intent of the metaphor, if you like, that God's hands are around us. And so to me, when I read about the hand of God, I think of guidance, I think of comfort, I think of a whole range of things. And we would use that same expression when we talk about the hands. That God's hands are comforting, protecting, leading, guiding us. And when we're talking about history, the hand of God involved with history. So last time I talked a little bit about the different theories of history. How one idea of history is that like a circle, just going round and round and round and round, just repeating itself. Other people see history more like a line, having a beginning, having an end. I think the biblical picture, of course, is bringing those two together and having more of a spiral. That there are repeated cycles, but history's going somewhere. Things are different and yet the same, and that there is a beginning and there is an end, and there is a purpose and intent. The Bible's pretty clear that history is not just the random occurrence of events. It's part of a cosmic story. It's part of His story, if you like. That purpose and destiny are real words that have real meaning today, and we're caught up in this magnificent play, and we have our parts to play, and we're allowed to improvise, but there's something else going on beneath the scenes. I read a book a while back called In Command of History. And this is a book about Churchill and his writings, and making the point that he kind of controlled what was happening through his writings. But of course, Churchill would be the first one to say that, you know, he wasn't in control of anything. He was doing what he felt called to do at the time. Churchill's one of my favourites, and done a bit of teaching on him over the years and various business groups and stuff. I've got this picture here I like. This is the famous front cover of Life magazine they did of Churchill, and where he's looking particularly gruff. They really called that bulldog kind of intransigent, we shall never surrender kind of look. And the way the photographer did that, he took lots of photos and they just couldn't get the right expression. And Churchill had his cigar, which he always had. So the photographer took the cigar away. Churchill got really upset that he hadn't got his cigar, and they took the photo. And that's the upsetness there, not of Nazi Germany, but in fact of the fact that someone's just stolen his cigar. And he's upset. We must get that back. But Churchill said, when he became Prime Minister, you know, the war had already begun, he said, I slept soundly that night, that suddenly I had a chance to be leading over the entire scheme of things, that my whole life up to this moment was but preparation for this day and for this hour. I said, I felt that I was walking with destiny. This idea that he's caught up in a story and this idea there's something else going on. There's a meaning, there's a purpose, there's a guidance to the story. And this is found throughout history. And so certainly it's the Bible's position. It's an exciting idea, isn't it? To think that my life, your life, is not a random occurrence of chance events. There's purpose behind it. Purpose governs the world. Why, for example, is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something? The chances that there would be something are astronomical, but here we are. And this idea that what we discover about our world is not some random, this could never have happened, but it's a sense that God's design is behind everything going on, that we're born into a universe with great purpose in mind. One of the biggest selling books recently has been on this subject. I reckon human beings long for purpose. Rick Warren, just a Baptist pastor, wrote this book And at one stage it was selling 1 million copies a month. And the point is, we much for purpose and look for purpose and want, even people who don't believe in God, wish that there was a God that had a purpose behind it all. Because so much stuff happens we don't understand. We say, how could that be purposed? And yet there's other stuff going on beneath the scenes that suggests that something else is going on in our world. Like the old song, He's got the whole world in His hands. And He's not just got the whole cosmic story, but we actually feel that ourselves. Because the second verse of that particular well-known song says He's got the little bitty baby. I don't know what the word bitty means. Bitty's not even an English word, is it? Bitty. Little bitty baby in His hands. But He's got the big and the small. And so it's not just God's got purpose of the world, but you're a nothing. He's got purpose for us as well. And somehow we fit into the play, and we can improvise, and we can do wrong things. And the story continues on with or without our particular, reliant. Or if we get it all wrong, God's history is still going to come to pass. Things are still going to come to pass, but we miss out on what we could have done because He's got the whole world in His hand. But we carry that sense that we are in the hand of God as well. So, that being true, how do we then live? How do we live? Do we live like the old song, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, where we just kind of react to what's happening? If God's purposed it all, then what's the point of doing anything? If you're going to hang, you're not going to drown, so don't worry about it. Just whatever's going to be, will be. Or do we react in a proactive way? Do we actually do something? Are we meant to move forward? It's the classic conundrum between free will and this idea of providence. Now, all this week I've had this thinking about this weekend, and I've had two things in my brain. One is a verse of Scripture, which to me is very, very powerful, and the other is a story in Scripture. In fact, probably the story in the Bible which contains more information on this one particular story than any other story in the Old Testament. And so what I'm going to do is read the verse, talk about the story, and we're going to see how these two things interweave to help us all, I reckon, think about our own personal journey and destiny and things like, how do I discover the will of God for me personally? The verse is found in Psalms 37, and I'm going to read it to you. It's going to come up on the screens as well. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in his way. And though he falls, he shall not be cast down, for the Lord upholds him with His hand. Now, this is a familiar verse to me, and I would say familiar to many people here and watching on television. When I grew up in New Zealand, the church we started going to as a family, we started going to church when I reached my teenage years, was singing the songs that nearly every church in New Zealand was singing, because a New Zealand couple wrote a lot of songs, David and Dale Garrett, and their songs were put in little books called Scripture in Song, and these songs went around the world. And what was neat about them is that most of the songs were just word for word out of the Scriptures, and so by learning a song, you suddenly discovered you learned parts of the Bible. This particular verse was one of those songs, and if you know it, just join in with me, because it goes something like this. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Sing! What's the matter with you? In His way, though he fall, he shall not be cast down. For the Lord upholdeth him with His hand, with His hand, with His hand. For the Lord upholdeth him with His hand. All together, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delighteth in... Oh, I got it wrong at the end, never mind. Give yourselves a hand for that, that's very good. And we also used to dance, do that in the middle of it too. Now, how many of you remember that song? Okay, a few people. The first service where the older people go, all the hands went up. You guys have been sleeping in this morning, haven't you? But, they were all singing away, and the actual little dance thing there was actually, it wasn't being silly there, that's actually a real dance. If you grew up in a little Pentecostal church anywhere in the world, dancing was wrong, People have been against dancing. People were against sex because they thought it led to dancing, because, dancing is really... Dancing's really bad. We were taught. But we know the Bible said a lot about dancing, so if you brought up a little Pentecostal church, the dance you did was that during the song. It's called the Pentecostal two-step. And it's true. How many remember that? There's a few hands there, a few knowing people. And so when I finally went to my first ever dance, John Travolta and said disco floor, then, I went, hey, I didn't... And the girls came rushing, let me tell you that. Anyway. So I've had that song, that verse, rolling around in my head. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. What is that? How does that play? I think the truth of what we're talking about is found in that verse. And at the same time, I had the story of Joseph resonating in my heart. Because Joseph kind of lived that out. In the story of Joseph, you have the sense of the big purpose of God, that his story is coming to pass. At the same time, you have this awareness that Joseph was involved in interacting and doing stuff in the process, that there was human responsibility and divine will, and somehow they intermingle to create a wonderful story, of part of his story. And I think that's true. Just thinking about it, those of you who remember the story of Joseph. If you've forgotten, let me give you like a short synopsis of the story of Joseph. Because Joseph was born to this dad who had 3 wives, and he had a bunch of older brothers, 11 older brothers, 1 younger brother, Benjamin. And one day, when Joseph was about 17, he started getting dreams at night of bales of hay and wheat sheaves bowing down to his sheaf of wheat, and then stars and the moon bowing down to him. And somehow he knew God had called him to be in a position of authority, and people would bow down to him. Someday in his future, he knew that was happening. Didn't know how it was going to come to pass. But he started going around telling his brothers who didn't like him anyway, because he used to wear this nice, brightly coloured Armani jacket, which his dad had made him, and he walked around thinking he was something special, something good, and part of his destiny was, but he kind of overplayed his hand, and the brothers kind of got mad at him, decided one day they're going to kill him. And so they waited till he came, and they were about to kill him, and then they saw some Egyptians coming by, thinking, hold it, let's not kill him, let's sell him to be a slave, we'll make money out of this. So they sold him to be a slave, and poor old Joseph finds himself in Egypt, and he's at the slave market there, and they sell him to this guy called Potiphar, and Potiphar's got this big house. He's quite politically connected, and so he's working there, and he's just a lowly servant, but he does a really good job, and he works hard and serves hard. He gets promoted till he becomes the premier servant in this big household. He thinks he's getting to his dream. He can see how things are going to happen. He's getting into authority. He's in the premier power of the world, Egypt, and now he's in leadership in one of the key houses. And then Potiphar's wife takes a fancy to him, gets the hots for him, says, you've got to come sleep with me, sleep with me. And Joseph's saying, no way, I can't do that. And so one day she courts him, traps him, grabs him, and he runs out there, and she's left holding his coat. So she cries out, rape, rape, and they arrest him, and they throw him into prison. And now he's far away from his dream. He's in prison, but he keeps on doing a good job in prison, and he's serving and doing well. He gets promoted to be the chief steward in the prison. And then these 2 guys from Pharaoh's household get thrown into prison, and they both have a dream one night. They said, we just had a dream. And Joseph said, well, I'm good at dreams, tell me. And so he said, okay, your dream means that you're going to get out of here, and you're going to go back and serve again in Pharaoh's household. The other guy said, what about me? What about me? He said, well, your dream means you're going to die. I'm sorry about that. And it's exactly what happened. One died, one gets released. And so Joseph said to the guy who's getting released, hey, remember me to Pharaoh. I'm meant to be there. I know in my bones. I feel like it. I don't know why I'm here. And so the guy says, don't worry, Joseph, good on you, mate. I remember you. And he goes and he forgets. So years go by. In fact, 13 years go by from the time that Joseph's first dream to when one day Pharaoh has a dream. Well, not one day, actually one night he has a dream. And he dreams about fat cows and thin cows and, eating one another. And he says, what's going on? What's going on? So he turns to his butcher, his baker, his candlestick maker. What's going on? What does the dream mean? And the one guy who's still alive out of the 3 said, there's a guy in prison. He interprets dreams. So Pharaoh says, get him. So they bring Joseph to the palace, and Pharaoh tells him the dream. And Joseph said, it means you're going to have 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. You need to appoint someone to run the country economically. Cycles are happening. You need to be prepared. And so Pharaoh says, okay, I think you're the man. You become my prime minister. And that is the story of Joseph in 3 minutes. Relax, Philip. Okay. Now, that's the story. To me, it's a story of God's hand. At the same time, Joseph did stuff that made it work for him. He positioned himself well. So, this verse then, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Think about it. Just think about the first section of that. The steps of a good man. Steps. What is it about steps? Are steps, for example, big things or little things? There's little things, aren't they? I think often when we follow God, we actually want God to show us the entire trip, don't we? We want to know what's the plan. And we mean plan, capital P, whole story. But God very rarely shows us the whole plan. He just shows us the next step, which is incredibly frustrating. Well, we want to know the whole thing. I was speaking to a lady after one services. She once kind of put it this way, that God's called her to dance, but she doesn't know the steps of the dance, but she knows every step just before it's coming. So she's got to dance with confidence, but she doesn't know where we're going, because He's the guide, He's the leader. She's just obeying on the very next step. And if you think about it, all you need to know is the next step. One writer put it this way, I like this. He said, it's like driving a car at night. You can never see further than your own headlights, but you can make the whole journey that way. Isn't that true? Little steps, little steps, little steps. So we can learn that lesson. You know, my grandmother, when she turned 85, she decided to get on this bit of a fitness thing. You know, well, better late than never. And so she started walking. She decided to walk a kilometre a day. Kilometre a day. And that was like 12 years ago. And we haven't got the foggiest idea where she is now. Just writing, it's a good idea to include that joke, wasn't it? Worked. Now, someone just got it in the front. Well done. It's good. It's good. Now, the second thing about steps, I think, is that it also tells us that we are meant to move. We're not meant to sit waiting for God. If the will of God's there, well, He doesn't want us to sit and let Him do it all. We're meant to do it. We've got to interplay with this. We have a part to play. Free will is involved in, yes, the music's playing, and yes, there are certain right steps. We still got to choose to take them. You've got to take the steps that God gives you. There's a great truth here. We're meant to happen. See, life's not meant to happen to us. We're meant to happen to life. You might have had a background, you might have had a bunch of stuff gone wrong in your world, and you can sit on the floor and be miserable about it and say, well, that's it, I'm not. No, take the next step, which God's called you, and do it well, and engage in it well, and shine on that step. You're in prison. Well, be great in prison. Don't just sit in the corner and sulk. Be great, because you don't know where each step leads. But engage with the journey. In other words, think about it. The church is all about doing, isn't it? What's the name of the book to describe the church? It's called Acts. Doing. Go into all the world and preach the gospel, resist the devil, answer the phone, follow the calling, whatever it is. You just got to do stuff, haven't you? Got to do stuff. We've got to be active. Our destiny is discovered in the doing. Here's a line, I like this. It says this, you don't think... Is that Rod? No, it's not Rod. Okay, we'll let you off. It's an important phone call, I'm sure, as they always are. Okay, I'm just jiving with you now. I don't want to, some doctor is on call. Oh, shut up, you know. If you're watching my television, we're just having phone calls. That's all. It's good. People love us. That's what it means. Here we go. You with me now? You don't think your way into a new way of living. You live your way into a new way of thinking. Oh, that's good, isn't it? Oh, yeah, I'll write that down. Oh, well, you didn't write it down, did you? Let me say it again. You don't think your way into a new way of living. You live your way into a new way of thinking. Sometimes we analyse it. Oh, yeah, I know about God. I know the Bible or theology. Oh, yes. Yeah, but what do? You only learn it when you really do it. Amen. You know, it's good to learn, but translate the hearing into doing, because the doing's where we get it. It's only when we do we get it. Oh, evangelism, oh, it's really good, I really believe. Yeah, but until you start sharing your faith with someone else and inviting to stuff, you don't get the thrill of it. You don't get the blessing of it. It's the doing that actually cements it, imprints it into our spiritual DNA. So important. This is why I think sloth. Everyone say sloth? Sloth. It's a nice word, isn't it? It's a euphony to it. Sloth is a deadly sin, because it says I don't do anything. I just sit back and let it be done to me. No. Life's not meant to happen to us, we're meant to happen to life. This is the calling of God. In every area. Money. You're not meant to pay minimum required monthly and just survive. We're meant to grow, we're meant to do stuff, we're meant to give, we're meant to serve, we're meant to invest. We're actually meant to do stuff. You know what I'm saying? Serving, let's serve. Our character's got to develop attitude. You know, we can change our attitude, can't we? Before I was leading the church here, I was doing quite a bit of traveling and speaking, especially before I was married. And I spoke once at a pastor's deal in England. And there was a lot of pastors there. And then in the evening service, they had all these pastors, but they also had the bulk of the church as well. It was It was way up north in England. There'd be about 400 or 500 people there that night. Little building packed out. And I can't remember if I was a speaker or not, but I do remember the service because of the guy down the front. I was sitting down the front on this side, but there was a guy down the front just sitting down there on a chair on his own, which seems strange today, but back there then, in the 90s and the 80s, most churches had someone who sat down the front next to a little table, and they had a piece of technology there, which we've forgotten what it is. He was operating what they used to call in the olden days an overhead projector. Do anybody remember overhead projectors? Nowadays we have, computers and they put the words up on big screens. But they had an overhead projector. And this is to help people sing, that when the band began to sing a song, well, what are the words? What are the words? Because we got rid of the songbooks, but no one had thought up, what do we do with no songbooks? So there was several years of silence in the church till someone came up with overhead projector. Oh, we put them on the screen. That'll work. So the person will put this, and you would have some songs were like 3. They were called acetates, weren't they? Acetate. 3 of those per song, some of them 2, some of them 1. And there's one person's job was to put the words up in time with where we're at in the song. Now, in watching lots of overhead projectionists, there was a range of the skill set. Some people were abysmal, some were very good. Like most people would kind of came and sort of, as song number 1 began, they started looking for the screen, and they'd find it, and then they'd put it up upside down, and they'd turn it round, and just when they got it right, you'd finish the song. Then a new song, and they start looking there through, and couldn't find it. They can't find it. And try to act like it's not their fault, it's not their fault. And most people couldn't see them because they're right down the front, apart from the front row. Anyway, on this particular evening, they had like a 14-year-old kid doing overhead projector, and I just kind of half noticed him. And the service began, and I was immediately impressed because the words of the right song were up immediately. And I thought, that's pretty good. The guys obviously worked out what the song order. And then this was a particularly difficult song in that it had 3 verses and a bridge. But he kind of knew the order it went in, because always the right screen. And the right screen wasn't half a phrase behind the singing, it was in time. Just when the words come up just before you get there, rather than just after you've got there and go, ah. Listen to this, computer operators at the back. Okay, and so, this guy was great. And I started watching him. He wasn't just great in the performing, he was great in the doing, his spirit, his heart, his attitude. He was like worshipping God. He wasn't just doing a job. He had been to the practice. You could tell he's thinking this. If I don't do this well, people are not going to be able to see the words. They're not going to be able to worship God. So my job is just as important as the guitarist, the piano players, and maybe almost as important as the drummer, I'm not sure. But we're going to be doing that. And if I don't do this well, people can't worship. So he's worshipping God, even though no one could see him apart from the front row. He's doing well, and he's got the screens ready to go, and he was quick, and overhead nostril, there it goes there, and all that. And he was like between, oh, thank you, Lord, yeah, he was, yeah, praise God. And he was on his toes, he was like, and it was God. And I'm thinking, he comes to the end of the singing, and I'm thinking, you know what, if I'm going to go and say hello to him and just say, well done, because if he maintains that attitude of focus and awareness and intelligence, no matter what he chooses to do in life, he'll do it well. He'd be a great lawyer, or a shopkeeper, or a salesman, or a pastor. It didn't matter, the fact he's got the right attitude. And so I came to the meet and greet thing, and so I'm over here, I'm going to go walk across to this guy and say, good on you, mate. The whole front row of pastors all descended on this kid. He was like in the centre of a scrum. They're all giving out cards, come and work for me, you should see my overhead projector. I said, oh, you were great. Because it's not what you do, it's how you do it. You could be in prison, but how are you going to be in prison? Are you going to sit and mope, or are you going to, like Paul and Silas, sing songs? You could be serving a Potiphar way down the bottom of the food chain, but serve well. It's attitude. A lot of people say, well, when they stop paying me right, I'm going to start working hard. No, wrong way around. Start working hard. Become the most underpaid person there. Because you're doing so much, you will discover that if that person's too mean to do something about it, someone else will see it at some time. That character comes first. Character's not a result. It's not. We don't react to life. We cause. We happen to it rather than the other way around.
Wasn't that a great message, and good to hear from Phil again on Destiny. That was part 1 of the 2 parts, and we've got the second part next week, so make sure you stay tuned to see that next week. Hope you have a fantastic week wherever you are, coming to church, in your lounge room, and we're going out across the world. Hope you're loving the show, and we'll catch you next week on Review Live.